Hi guys, and welcome to this week's short video tutorial on Xiangqi opening theory. Now this will be the second board, which is a continuation of the video that was done last week. Now, again, the topic of discussion will be the pawn opening, and black could counter with the thundering cannon defense. And again, we will discuss red playing c2 equals to 5 for the central cannon, and black playing e3, the right elephant variation. H2 plus 3. Black starts to attack this file. Red develops the Chariot, hoping to compensate for any uh, loss on this side of the board. The edge horse. And this would be the topic of discussion for this board. Instead of playing the elephant iron horse immediately, Black would develop his left chariot as a rank chariot. Now, uh, by doing so, Black would prepared to push his to traverse his chariot across the board, usually to either the elephant's eye or the second file. I'm sorry, or the eighth file, second black file. Now, black would try to concentrate material, attacking this flank very early in the game, and it will strengthen his right flank, while his left flank would be weakened and often become a target of attack for red. So faced with this position, there are two main variations that are discussed. The first will be R2 plus 4, whereby black will try to dislodge the pawn, and the other will be R9 equals to 8. Now these two variations are very similar to the previous board. One thing to note at this point in time is, would it be a good idea, since black had already developed his left chariot as a rank chariot, would it be a good idea to play c5 plus 4 to capture the central pawn? Because this would force black to move the advisor and thus prevent the chariot from moving across the palace to this side of the board. Now, is this a good idea? The answer would be not quite. Red will usually counter with e7 plus 5, threatening the pawn. But black would simply give up the pawn and instead play h2 plus 4 to threaten this cannon instead. Now, red will be placed in a dilemma. If red, for example, if red retreated one move, black could continue and to develop his material while still threatening to pester the red cannon. Now, if the red cannon retreated two moves, the pawn will immediately target it. So red would have used up at least 1, 2, 3, another move for 4 moves for the cannon right at the beginning of the game. Now this would go against the opening tenets, the tenets of opening theory, whereby red would have moved the same piece too many times earlier on. So that is why it is not a good idea for it is not a good idea for red to capture the central pawn. So we begin our discussion with variation A, whereby red would play r2 plus 4 to try to dislodge this black pawn. Now, this is considered to be a very slow-paced but very steadfast approach to this game. Now, if black wanted to prevent the black rank chariot from crossing the palace by playing c5 plus 4, the losses would be even greater, as mentioned just now. So now the issue on the board will be the pawn. So how would black react? Black would simply continue with r9 equals to 4 to command this very important line, preparing to play p3 equals to 4, forcing red to move his chariot to this side of the board to capture it. Now at this time, it is important for black to advance his chariot to the pawn rank to protect it. Now this is a very far-sighted move, because by controlling the pawn rank, black would be able to maneuver his other material and free himself from a bind. So As this variation was rather dull, there were not many variations that was given. Instead, in the book, P9 plus 1 was given as Red tried to develop his horse. Red countered with P1 plus 1, and the battle would be would start at the riverbank. Black would capture the pawn, and Red would trade his cannon for the horse. And after trading, both the red chariots would now be developed as well as the black chariots have been developed too. Black would play p7 plus 1, indicating that he will be prepared to develop his horse as a proper horse. Red would have none of it and trade pawns so that he could develop his horse also. Now this is another commonly used tactic in Xiangqi. After trading pawns, Black could still move his horse because it will be protected by the cannon. Sorry. Red would continue and try to patrol both the banks of the river and deny the black horse from further development. But in doing so, Black would counter with c8 minus 1, another commonly used tactic whereby the cannon would now be prepared to play c8 equals to 7 to attack this line. Red would try to draw first blood before Black can do so and target the chariot, forcing the chariot away. And Red would take the opportunity to play e3 plus 5 to protect the horse, so that when the black cannon attacks, Red can simply move his chariot away. Black would play c3 equals to 4 to target the advisor and also give his chariot an open line. And to prevent the advisor from being captured, Red will usually defend in this manner. And Black will now start his attack with c8 equals to 7 to target the chariot, forcing it to move away. But as can be seen, both colors have controlled rather important lines, and this will be considered an even situation. Now, usually Black will continue by playing one of the advisors so that he would not be afraid of 4 plus 4. And but because both colors have defended their formations very nicely and there are only 2 pawns left apiece for each color, the game will become very drawish. So this variation is not so commonly seen nowadays. Instead, R9 equals to 8 for the second variation would be more commonly seen, whereby Red would develop his left chariot in preparation for the black chariot. Again, the black chariot will cross the palace, a prophylactic move by Red to prevent the black chariot from attacking this intersection. Now, Black would continue with 4 plus 4. Now, this would be an aggressive move by Black to try to fight for the initiative and to prevent the red chariot from playing R2 plus 4. Now, would it be a good idea for Black to try to fortify his defenses in preparation for C5 plus 4? Let's see. If A4 plus 5 were played, Red would go ahead to try to attack the pawn, and how would Black deal with this situation? Now there are 2 sub-variations. The first would be P3 plus 1. The second would be R4 plus 4. Now let us study this sub-variation first. Instead of playing R4 plus 4 earlier on, Black had already moved the advisor. But in doing so, Red will counter in a very ingenious manner with C8 plus 2. Now, if the black pawn captured the red cannon, the red chariot would now capture the black chariot. So this would force Black to play R4 equals to 8, whereby Red would take the opportunity to not only develop his cannon to attack the horse and also give his chariot an open line. And since the horse was under attack, Black would be forced to move the horse and red will take the opportunity to play p3 plus 1, which will not only allow the cannon to attack the pawn, it will also allow for further development of this red horse. So red would have a significant advantage at this point in time because all the 5 remaining major pieces are developed while black has still to develop his right chariot and right horse. So red would have a significant advantage. So r4 plus 4 would not be a good idea. So what about p3 plus 1? If p3 plus 1 were played, red would simply go be aggressive with r2 equals to 7. And at this point in time, after c8 equals to 6, the red chariot would gain an open line, and the black pawn cannot play p3 equals to 4 at this point in time, or the cannon would capture the chariot. So either way, this pawn would be captured, and red would have the initiative because black had already used 1, 2, 3 moves to move this pawn. So that is why a4 plus 5 is not a good idea, and black should try to protect this pawn at this point in time with r4 plus 4. So at this point in time, since r2 plus 4 is not possible now, it is advised that red try go for an attack on the central file. c8 equals to 6 for the 5-6 cannon would not be a good idea at this point because black will consolidate his central file. But in doing so, because the right flank had not moved, the red chariot would simply attack in this manner. Now, one common strategy for black to use in similar situations would be to retreat the cannon, but unfortunately this would not be possible because the red chariot would now have prevented this from happening. And the issue of this black horse would have to be dealt with. So that is why black would usually have to develop his left horse as a edge horse. Now, developing the horse as an edge horse is sometimes not so desirable because the scope is limited and the black horse would have a little bit trouble developing later on. And red will capture the central pawn. Black would try to develop his horse later on by playing p9 plus 1 as a prophylactic move. And red would continue with e3 plus 5 to consolidate his own defense. Black would try to play p1 plus 1. And at this point in time, the cannon would move and black would try to play c7 minus 1 to dislodge the red chariot. But as can be seen, black could have moved quite a few pieces and red would be forced to move his chariot away again. So red would not have profited much in this variation. So that is why c8 equals to 6 would not be a good idea if the similar tactics used in the previous variations were used. Instead, red could continue with c5 plus 4, delivering a check and forcing the advisor to move. Now, playing c5 equals to 1 would be one commonly used tactic by red, whereby red would threaten to storm the bottom rank with c1 plus 3 later on. So this this would force black to move the horse again to the edge file, and after dealing with the issue of this cannon, red would turn his attention to this side of the board with c8 equals to 4. Now this would be an adjustment in the formation, whereby red will slowly but surely apply concentrate material on this flank. Now, it would not be a good idea to play e7 plus 5 at this point in time because since there was no cannon over here, black would simply develop his horse as an ei horse, an elephant eye horse. If red played c8 equals to 6, black would simply trade the chariots. And again, as can be seen, black would now be threatening to storm this side of the board. And the material on red's left flank is unprotected and very vulnerable to attacks by the chariot. In comparison, uh, the black horse and this horse, if you were to compare them, the red horse is unprotected. Uh, there's ample protection for this edge horse by the elephant and maybe even by the cannon if need be. So the situation here would be very fragile and black would be considered to have the advantage. So that is why e7 plus 5 would not be a good idea. Instead, it would be recommended for red to be aggressive with c8 equals to 4 for the cross-balanced cannon. Again, red would try to develop his black would try to develop his right flank, and red would consolidate his position. Now, at this point in time, it would be advisable for black to offer a trade of chariots. Now, as can be seen from the variation shown here and the previous variation, it would be doing so would be black's attempt to isolate this red horse. Now, even though the cannon had already moved away, after trading chariots, this red horse will still be very vulnerable and will be an obvious target for red to attack. So if r equals to 2 a plate, red will be forced to trade chariots or lose momentum. And at this point in time, red would immediately play p3 plus 1. The p3 plus 1, by advancing the pawn, red would be prepared to develop his horse. And there's also another motive for doing so, as red would now have the option of playing c1 minus 2 to attack the chariot and pawn at this point in time. So black would usually play c8 equals to 7, targeting the horse in the same file. Red will retreat the cannon, and black would simply advance his chariot. If if the cannon captured the pawn, red would simply threaten to capture this pawn and also attack the horse. The situation on the board would now become a little bit complicated. At this point in time, how should red react? It is recommended that red play r2 equals to 3 to prevent the central pawn from being captured. Now, c4 plus 1 to shoo away the black chariot is also a possibility. This would force the chariot away. And finally, the black would finally be able to save his pawn. But in doing so, red would now be able to concentrate material, preparing to storm this flank. So red would have a slight advantage. But c4 plus 1 is a viable alternative. Now, in the book, in variation B, r2 plus 3 was given as the main line. And black will continue with h2 plus 4, capturing the pawn. And in compensation for the loss of the pawn, black would be able to develop his horse, which will be prepared to go into action. Now, at this point in time, red would have 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns, while black would only have 2 pawns left. Now, red's pawn advantage would be, black's disadvantage with the pawns will be compensated by the fact that his material were more active and they were prepared to go. So perhaps black will continue with p7 plus 1 and to threaten the horse, etc. etc. Now, the situation on the board would become more complicated, but each color would have enjoyed its own advantages. So, a short recap. This would be the position of discussion in this board whereby black would develop his left chariot as a ranked chariot. In variation A, r2 plus 4 was played, which was a subtle but too cautious variation, whereby it would end in a very drawy situation, whereby neither color would have a significant advantage, or it would be very hard for either color to win. So in variation B, r9 equals to 8. With r9 equals to 8, black would play r9 equals to 4, which is a subtle move, but would allow black more options later on in the opening phase. After After red consolidates its defense, black will usually try to protect the pawn, his precious pawn, with r4+4, and red would be compensated with an extra pawn on the central file, followed by the edge pawn. The black horse will be developed, and red will try to adjust his formation, now slowly targeting this flank. So development of the material and a trade of chariots is usually done so that this horse will become vulnerable. So it's r8+9. Red tries to develop his horse with pt+1, and after a trading material, after capturing the black pawn, black will be compensated with development of the horse. So this is the second board in the series. I hope you have been enjoying these two videos, because it shows the gradual development of the pawn versus thundering cannon, the modern way of playing this opening system. And frankly speaking, I play a lot on the internet, and I've played the thundering cannon mostly as black, and this opening system is very subtle and very subtle, but the room for error is very minimal. You will often see a winning position become a losing one very quickly. So I hope you've enjoyed this short video. If you like the work that I've been doing, please subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up. Thank you.